Many Christians don't know a whole lot about the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. But to understand what's going on in this Sunday's gospel reading, which is from John chapter 10, verses 22 through 30, we need to learn a little bit about Hanukkah, because this happens to be the only place in the Bible where Hanukkah is actually mentioned. So we're going to look at Hanukkah, and we're going to look also at Ezekiel chapter 34, where there's talk of God sending a son of David who will be the shepherd of his people Israel, because this being Good Shepherd Sunday also, that text is important for understanding what's going on in the conversation that Jesus has with the Jews in the temple in Jerusalem. So we're looking at Hanukkah, and we're looking at Ezekiel chapter 34, and we're using these to understand exactly what is happening in John chapter 10. So first of all, Hanukkah. I'll be really brief. You can read a lot more about it online. I'll put some of that in the notes below this video. So basically, the historic situation is this. For a long time, the Israelites had been under the domination of the Greeks, and things were getting worse and worse because there was a ruler called Antiochus IV Epiphanes, and what he was doing was basically shoving the Greek culture and the Greek religion down the throats of the Jews, especially in Jerusalem. He was prohibiting circumcision, he was prohibiting the Jewish dietary laws, and he even went so far, in the lowest point, to set up an altar to the pagan god Zeus in the temple in Jerusalem. Now, there was a Jewish family, a faithful Jewish family known as the Maccabees, whose name means hammer, and they were the ones who hammered away at the overlords who were forcing this Hellenistic way of life down the throats of the Jews. These Maccabees led the rebellion against the Greeks, and they were able actually to miraculously to win independence, political as well as religious independence. And what they did at that time, when they regained control of the temple and they cleansed the temple of all the pagan elements, is they wanted to light the menorah. But they only had enough oil for one day. So they went ahead and put the oil in there and they lit it. And the miracle was that oil lasted for 8 days. And that's why when Jews celebrate Hanukkah today, it's an 8-day festival. And sometimes it's called the Festival of Lights because of this connection with light and menorah. But Hanukkah itself comes from the Hebrew word, which means dedication, the dedication of the temple. So all of this, when you go to John chapter 10 and you read verse 22, it says Jesus was in Jerusalem for the festival or the feast of dedication. Well, that's the feast of Hanukkah, which means dedication. So that's a historic background, and we're going to return to that in just a minute. But there's a couple of other details I want you to pay attention to. They're very easy for us to just skim over as if they're not really important, but they're very significant. Jesus is in Jerusalem for the festival of Hanukkah or dedication. And where is he? Well, he's in the temple. And specifically, where is he at in the temple? He is in the portico of Solomon. Now, this is important because this portico of Solomon adds what you might call some spatial tension to the story. Because, of course, Solomon is a son of David. And one of the questions that the Jews want Jesus to answer is basically, are you the son of David? Are you the Messiah? And that's precisely what they ask him in the dialogue which ensues. They come around Jesus, they say, tell us plainly. So don't beat around the bush. Are you the Messiah or not? And still Jesus doesn't give them the kind of answer that they're looking for. Instead, he says basically, well, pay attention to what I'm doing. My works explain who I am. What kind of works is he talking about? Well, he's been feeding the multitudes miraculously, just like Moses did in the wilderness. He has been healing the sick. In the previous chapter, John chapter 9, he healed a guy who had been blind. So he's healing and he's feeding. He's doing messianic kinds of things. So his works ought to be enough to give the answer to the Jews as to whether he's the Messiah or not. But Jesus says, the reason you don't get it is because you are not of my sheep. He says, my sheep hear my voice. I know them, they know me, and they follow me. And nobody is ever going to be able to snatch them out of my hand or the Father's hand, because I and the Father are one. Now, back to Hanukkah. In Ezekiel chapter 34, how does all of this inform our understanding of what's going on in this dialogue? Well, in a lot of ways. Here's the connection with Hanukkah. Okay, so in the original Hanukkah, back in the 160s BC, what was happening in Israel? Well, they were under a foreign power. just like Israel now is in Jesus' day. They were under the Roman power in Jesus' day, just like they'd been under the Greek power back when Hanukkah first began. So every celebration of Hanukkah in the first century, they were not only remembering what God did for them way back then, but they're also looking forward to a time when God was going to free them from Roman domination. And if you know anything about Messianic expectations in the first century, there were a whole lot of people who expected the Messiah to come in and to kick the Romans out. That was the kind of Messiah they were looking for, a warrior Messiah who was going to come in and take care of the Romans once and for all and to usher in freedom once more. They were kind of looking for a Maccabee Messiah who was going to do for them now what the Maccabees had done for the Israelites back in the 160s BC. So that's the question. What kind of Messiah is Jesus going to be? Well, he's going to be, in his own words, he's going to be the feeding and the healing and the shepherding Messiah, because that's exactly what has been prophesied back in Ezekiel chapter 34. So in Ezekiel 34, you can read it for yourself. There's a lot of beautiful imagery there about how God is going to shepherd his people Israel, and he's going to send the son of David who's going to shepherd his people Israel as well. He's going to send this new king, the rightful heir to the throne, who is going to be a shepherd for the people of Israel. Now, what happens today, unfortunately, and I'm sure you've heard sermons like this, is the good shepherd gets reduced down to kind of this sappy sentimentality. Well, that's completely unbiblical. In the biblical mind, shepherds were kings. So in the Old Testament, gods and kings were described as shepherds. So when we hear good shepherd in reference to Jesus, really what we're hearing is good king. This is the shepherd who rules in a good and a loving and a just way. It's a regal title. The shepherd of Israel is the king of Israel. So when Jesus comes as the good shepherd, he's the good king. He's the king who judges wisely. He's the king who takes care of his people. He's the king who feeds his people, protects his people, heals his people. That's the kind of shepherd that Jesus is. So you have this conversation going on in the context of Hanukkah, in which the people are wondering whether Jesus is the son of David. And they're wondering if he, as he walks through the temple, as he walks through the portico of Solomon, if he is the new Solomon, if he's the new son of David. And Jesus says, more or less, yes, I am, but I'm not the kind of son of David that you're expecting, because I am the one prophesied back in Ezekiel chapter 34. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the good king. I'm the one who's going to take care of my people. And my people are going to hear my voice. And I know them, and they know me, and they're going to follow me. And nobody and nothing is going to be able to snatch them out of my Father's hand. And then he has this mind-blowing declaration. He says, not only am I the Messiah, not only am I the son of David, but I and the Father are one. Now, it seems mind-blowing to us, but if you pay attention to Ezekiel chapter 34, the hint is already there of this connection between Jesus, the Messiah, the connection between the son of David as the Messiah and Yahweh. Because in Ezekiel chapter 34, God himself says that he will shepherd Israel, but then he turns around and says that the son of David will shepherd Israel. So which is it? Will God shepherd the people of Israel, or will the son of David shepherd the people of Israel? Well, yes, because that is who Jesus is. He is the son of David, and he's also the God of Israel in one person. He is David's son, the rightful heir to the throne, and he's also the Father's son, one with him in essence from all eternity, combining in himself both the human and the divine nature, the son of David and the Son of God. And he is now going to provide the kind of liberation that Israel and the rest of the world really needs. And it's not liberation from the Romans or liberation from any kind of political domination. It's a liberation from something that's far more serious. It's a liberation from death. It's a liberation from the devil. It's a liberation from the sin which is eating us alive. That's the kind of liberation that this new shepherd gives to us. So on the festival of Hanukkah in Jerusalem, at the temple, this new son of David, this new and greater Solomon, is going to be the one who shepherds us into eternal life because he is the one who provides for us everything that had been prophesied back in Ezekiel chapter 37 and everything that had been anticipated in all these celebrations of Hanukkah ever since it began in the 160s BC. So I hope that has provided you with a little bit of extra light as to exactly what's going on in John chapter 10, verses 22 through 30. Think of Hanukkah, think of Ezekiel chapter 34, and think of exactly how these are going to give us the background and the understanding for who Jesus is and what he's doing as it's declared on this Good Shepherd Sunday. Thanks for watching, and may God bless your worship and your celebration, ongoing celebration of the resurrection of our Lord.